part of our three-part live stream. First time ever doing this with the channel. We had two wonderful Q&As on Friday. First time we ever did Friday and Saturday. We usually only do Saturdays and Sundays, but we decided to add a third feature, and this one is not a Q&A, not an ask me anything about history, social science related stuff. It is a way for you guys to it is more of me talking about different historical topics that have come to mind, because every week I've been having these different topics that I've been wanting to talk about in the live stream that no one has been able to get to, because we've had so many great questions from so many wonderful people who've asked really great and engaging things, and we've talked about a lot of amazing social science topics. So although I really won't be getting to questions and things like that, I will be talking about different historical topics that are interesting and maybe inspiring, that have helped form the world the way they are. Okay, good. The sound's good now? Great. Good to see you. So I don't know what was happening, but we fixed the sound issues we were having earlier. We got a little bit of a late start, but for the next probably about 40 minutes or so, I will be bringing you some history facts, some history stories, and some topics that I've wanted to discuss that I haven't gotten to in the live stream, because there's been a lot of great people in the live stream asking a lot of great questions. But before we even get started, before I get started with that, I've got to do the plug-in. If you love learning about history, if you like talking about social studies, and if you like watching content, short form and long form, which the channel has both, about historical topics and historical issues, then please consider liking and subscribing. We're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're over 5,100 strong. Becoming a friendly neighborhood historian has never been easier, and it's as easy as liking and subscribing. You don't have to give me your Patreon. You don't have to sign up for a mailing list. You don't have to give me your credit card unless you really want to. It's as easy as that. Yes, I know you do. Thank you so much. I appreciate your enjoyment of it. But yeah, it's as easy as liking and subscribing, and you guys can become friendly neighborhood historians and learn more about social studies on the daily basis. I've got content dropping weekly. I typically do longer form videos at least once a week, and short form content several a day at least. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So if you want to become a friendly neighborhood historian, it's as easy as liking and subscribing, and you are a friendly neighborhood historian. It's as easy as that. So today on this stream, we are not going to be answering questions and talking so much, but hopefully you guys all behave yourselves and enjoy what you're learning about in the chat. I've got several topics I haven't gotten to, and so we decided to extend, instead of having two parts to our weekly or weekend live streams, we decided to do a third part. So Friday and Saturday, we were going to be doing Q&As, and Sundays, we're going to be talking about historical topics that I want to discuss because I haven't been able to get to them in the live stream. Anyways, so I have several different historical topics I want to discuss with you guys today that I think you'll really, really enjoy, and we'll talk about that for a little while. And then maybe at the end, if there's still a little bit of time, we can ask some questions. I'll be going to about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we're trying this out, trying to do 3 live streams a weekend and see how that is. We're also considering going live on social media platforms and things like that. So consider liking and subscribing and joining the near legion of friendly neighborhood historians. The goal is to hit a legion by the end of the year, 6,000 strong. So, Prussia. I know that's random. I know that sounds really random, but what is Prussia? I'm sure you guys have heard about it before. And what is the significance historically of the Prussian state? I've wanted to talk about this for weeks now, but so many people have been asking so many great questions in the live streams that I've decided to create my own, whatever you want to call this third live stream, where I just talk about historical topics, and hopefully this can evolve into some sort of podcast-like thing. But basically, Prussia, when you think of the modern state of Germany, for all of its ups and downs, when you think of what it means to be German, Germany is a diverse place with many different sub-ethnicities and different groups, different regions. It has been broken apart many times in its history. It has kind of always been in a fractured state to one extent or another. But modern Germany as a nation has only existed for about 150 years, and that is including the time when it was divided during the Cold War between East Germany and West Germany. So basically, Prussia is basically the German state. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that over 150 years ago, the Prussians started unifying all the different German states and principalities into one large empire that became known as the German Empire. So we're going to talk a little bit about the origins of Prussia. We're also going to talk about who the German people were and what made people German before the Prussians unified the German-speaking peoples into one country, although it wasn't all of that. So One so here basically uh, throughout most of its history, Germany has been divided into kind of a fractured position, and that includes when it was the East and West Germany after World War II. It also includes when Germany was what's called, at least most of Germany was what's called the Holy Roman Empire, which also included places like Bohemia, which is modern-day Czech Republic, as well as Austria, the Netherlands, parts of different parts of Poland, things like that. So for a lot of its history during the Middle Ages, it wasn't known as Germany. There were no German people. During ancient Roman times, the earliest encounters were with Germanic barbarians, Celts, Alemanni, Teutoni, different Germanic peoples who lived east of the Rhine River. And the Rhine River is significant because not only is it the main river in Germany, but it is also the demarcation point between France and Germany that really was created because the Romans were able to conquer all of what was called of France back then. It was called Gaul, but they were never able to successfully conquer and control the Germanic peoples. So the Germanic peoples were the barbarians that the Romans could never conquer, and they would often sweep into the Roman Empire, pillaging, raiding, and oftentimes just looking for food and settlement. And there were different ones: Goths, Teutoni, Alemanni, the Lombards. Most of the barbarians that end up destroying the Roman Empire were actually Germanic in origin. So what made them German was that they are from what is now modern day Germany. But they were all but not just that. They were Central European barbarian tribes, and they had certain linguistic and cultural patterns that connected them together. So after the Roman Empire falls, those barbarians are still kind of there in that Central European ether, separated from the rest of the Western Roman Empire, which by this point in the 5th century AD is thoroughly Christianized. So France, Britain, Italy, those areas, what will become those areas in Western Europe, are thoroughly Christianized, whereas the German-speaking peoples have not been Christianized yet. However, missionaries from the Catholic Church in what's called the Dark Ages or the early Middle Ages. Dark Ages is a misnomer. There really was no Dark Ages. But what was I going to say? The these people, these missionaries would go into Germany and try to convert the local tribes and groups. Some of these tribes settled, like the Goths and the Lombards, in places like Italy and Spain, and eventually became Christian on their own. The Franks and the Celts were Germanic peoples, more or less, who kind of moved around that whole area between Britain, France, and Germany, the northwestern Europe, and they became Christianized. But Saxons, Alemanni, these groups that stayed in Germany remained pagan, worshiping different pagan gods, Druidic practices, similar to ancient barbarians in England who built Stonehenge. And those practices continued until the 8th and 9th century, because in the 8th and 9th century you have the development, and yes, this is a history lecture going on right now. In the 8th and 9th century you have Charlemagne, and when Charlemagne comes to power, he basically conquers all of Germany. He conquers and subdues the Germanic peoples. It takes him a long time. It took him 30 years to beat a group of Germans called the Saxons. And the Saxons were actually they were from northern Germany and southern Denmark, and they went into England and actually settled England, and that's why they're called the Anglo-Saxons. And so the English are kind of all over the place. They have Roman lineage, they have German lineage, they have different barbarian tribes, they have French and Frankish lineage. So Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, later known as the king of the French, takes over most of these barbarian groups and forces them to become Christians. And the way to force them to become Christians is to basically threaten them with death, or threaten their leaders with death. So a lot of times their leaders would hesitantly accept Christianity and be baptized, or else they would be faced with torture and execution. And then their peoples would also start to become Christian as well. Some willingly, some not so willingly, and some who resisted were hunted down and killed. So throughout his 45-year reign, Charlemagne was extremely good at subduing the barbarians east of the Rhine River. For all of his success in spreading Christianity to Central Europe, by force and by choice, and by setting up churches and all of these things, and all of his efforts at civilizing these peoples with Christianity and with more of a feudal, medieval-like structure that was already happening in his own kingdom of France, on Christmas Day 800, Charlemagne was crowned the king of the Romans, the Holy Roman Emperor. And so for the next 1,000 years, Germany is going to be considered on and off a Holy Roman Empire, along with other areas that I already mentioned, like the Czech Republic and Austria. So for a millennium between Charlemagne and Napoleon, Germany is going to be ruled by different emperors. The emperors at first are going to be a lineage, but then later they will be elected. They are approved of and appointed by the Pope. They are elected by different German princes and rulers and dukes and counts throughout all the different provinces. By the time you get to the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s, there are hundreds of different German states, some of them stronger, some of them less strong. And by the late 18th, early 19th century, the two most prominent are Brandenburg, Prussia, and Austria. And Austria, of course, is its own separate country from Germany today, but back then it was very involved in German affairs, in German life. So, anyways, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we are talking about the Prussians and the development of a modern German state. So, where does the modern German state come from? Well, the Holy Roman Empire had been kind of on the decline since the 1500s. The Protestant Reformation, tearing Europe between Catholic and Protestant, kind of leaves the Germans with a lot of it, with Holy Roman Empire divided. Their emperors are getting weaker and weaker as more and more princes are Protestant. The Catholic Holy Roman emperors from the Habsburg line are losing their influence and power until 1640, when Charles VII dies, and basically, or Charles VI, and after that, Prussia, the Holy Roman Empire, is no longer ruled by the Habsburgs, who continue to be the emperors of Austria until the 20th century, which is really important for what I'm going to tell you next. Napoleon conquers the Holy Roman Empire and deposes their emperor. I think it was Leopold I, and he is the last Holy Roman Emperor. So in 1806, Napoleon, thinking it was stupid and already having crowned himself emperor, the European emperor, the Emperor of France, destroys the Holy Roman Empire. And a lot of people already kind of consider the Holy Roman Empire an empire in decline for centuries. Voltaire, the French philosopher of the 18th century, had said it was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, because by his time it wasn't run by the church, it was German, more Roman, and it wasn't an empire, because what empire has its emperor elected by people? The Romans didn't have that, the Mongols didn't have that, no empire really has that. And this becomes one of the most famous statements in history. So the Holy Roman Empire, the German-speaking peoples, they were subdued and controlled by the French during the Napoleonic Wars, and this is where German nationalist movements start to come in. German nationalists believe that the German peoples need to have their own country and state, and the only thing that's really German, there is no Germany. They don't consider it Germany. It's the Holy Roman Empire, and there's all these different little kingdoms and areas like Bavaria and Saxony and Schleswig and Brandenburg, Prussia, like I mentioned, in Austria. They don't consider themselves to be German. They consider themselves to speak German and have German culture, listening to Beethoven and Bach, or reading Goethe, the most famous German writer of the time. So the point of this is that by this period, the early 19th century, there really isn't a lot of uniformity politically, but there is uniformity culturally and linguistically between these different principalities and duchies and small little kingdoms. These people start to become more unified and with a greater desire for their own national identity in their own country because of the oppression of the French under Napoleon. So when Napoleon is defeated, there sets off a race for the next 50 years between the Prussians and the Austrians for influence and dominance over Germany. Now, Brandenburg, Prussia. What is Brandenburg, Prussia? Well, Brandenburg, Prussia is in the northeastern corner of Germany, and it's actually divided. Prussia, Brandenburg is in northeastern Germany. Prussia is divided by land that is owned by the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the 1600s. Back then, Poland and Lithuania had their own little mini empire going. So Brandenburg, Prussia is not one country until 1644, where the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth basically allows Frederick I to become the king of Prussia in order for swearing his loyalty and alliance to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And his line is going to create a series of kings that are going to become very strong, very militaristic, very powerful, I'm trying to remember the name of that family line. The most famous of them is Frederick II, or Frederick the Great, who rules in the 1740s and 50s, who's very militaristic. He's known for having the best army in Europe at the time, and he's growing the Prussian influence in Germany, and he's constantly competing with the Austrians in the southeastern part of Germany. So, anyways, and yes, I am, I'm doing history right now. So, Austria, on the other hand, is ruled by the Habsburgs, and it's been ruled by the Habsburgs since the 13th century. The Habsburgs are an extremely powerful line. They ruled the Holy Roman Empire for centuries. They also were the kings of Spain for a long time. Kings like Charles V, or Emperor Charles V, who was also King Charles I of Spain, Philip II with the English Armada, these kinds of guys. So the Habsburgs are extremely powerful and influential, and they've ruled over Austria for centuries, and they feel that the German people should reflect Austrian culture. Austria has been extremely successful in the 18th century. It's a metropolitan center. Vienna is one of the most beautiful and prominent and cosmopolitan cities. This is the land of Mozart, for crying out loud. They are extraordinary, and yes, the Habsburg chin. They are an extremely powerful family. They're an extremely powerful country and empire, far more with the advantage than the Prussians during the early 1700s. But by the beginning of the 1800s, the Prussians are growing in strength and influence. So the tipping point for a lot of this is in 1848. 1848 sees revolutions break out of Europe out of nowhere. There's revolutions in Austria. There's revolutions in Bohemia. A French Revolution, because of course, and it's actually the Prussian prince, the Prince of Grapeshire, Friedrich, who is able to defeat. Friedrich Wilhelm is his name. He is able to use his forces and his ability, his superior cannon fire, which is why he's called the Prince of Grapeshot, to defeat and put down the revolutionaries throughout all of Germany. And the Prussians are going to create an economic system coming out of that revolution after stabilizing all of the German principalities, where they have a network of trade, of cultural exchange, of mutual defense treaties with all different German principalities except the Austrians, who are left out. They're also going to defeat the Austrians in a number of wars in the 1850s and 60s. So Prussia is growing in influence and strength. So as the 19th century progresses, Austria's power is going to decline, Prussia's is going to increase. Now, there's several reasons for this. One, the Prussians are led by better leaders. The best example of this is their chancellor in the 1850s and 60s, a man by the name of Otto von Bismarck. And Bismarck, known as a man of iron, is going to he's going to revamp the German military, which is going to help the Prussian military. He's going to stimulate the economy. The Prussians are going to make quick use of manufacturing, growth of industry. They're going to hone in on the Industrial Revolution with high coal, timber, and iron production, and they're going to become extraordinarily strong. They're going to produce a lot very quickly, and they're going to come up out of nowhere to challenge Austria, Russia, France, and Great Britain as one of the most powerful states in Europe in the 19th century. So the cultivation of the Industrial Revolution, having more access to natural resources that are conducive to the Industrial Revolution, and better leaders like Bismarck or Prince of Grapeshot, allows the Prussians to slowly but surely exude their strength and influence on not just the Prussians, because by this point, Brandenburg Prussia has been united, and Prussia has actually extended, and it looks like it's in northeastern Germany. It's like a little panhandle almost, but it's also going to express its influence over all of Germany. So this is going to continue throughout the 1850s, and it's going to really ramp up in the 1860s. And they're going to win several victories against the Danish and the Austrians. Bismarck is going to get involved in all sorts of different political affairs between France. There's Italy emerging at this time. And the biggest thing that's going to happen is that the Prussians are going to fight a war against the French. So in the 1870s, the French are run by late 1860s, early 1870s. The French are ruled by a guy named Emperor Napoleon III. Napoleon Napoleon is the nephew of the Napoleon Bonaparte, and he kind of stabilized France after its revolution in 1848. And he basically hops over the Second French Republic and becomes the emperor in the Second French Empire in 1852. And so he's known as France is very wealthy. They're very prominent. The Industrial Revolution is happening. The French are starting to build an international empire. France has the largest population in Europe. It has the most manpower in Europe, and it is the most industrialized of all mainland Europe. Britain would maybe be a little more industrialized, but it's not mainland. So he is going to see the growing influence of the Prussians, and he's going to challenge them. He's basically going to be insulted by Bismarck. Uses a few dignitaries who visit the French court, and he uses a fake insult thrown against them as a means to start a war, and that's going to be the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. And it's fought over an area called Alsace-Lorraine, which is an iron-rich area, very, very good for production, especially in the Industrial Revolution, between France and Germany. And this area, and the Prussians are going to surprise the French. They're going to win a bunch of battles. I'm trying to remember the name of the biggest battle. It starts with an H. But that battle is going to be a huge victory for the Prussians. They're going to unleash they're going to show Europe just how industrialized, just how much manpower, and just how strong they have become. They're going to make good use of railroads for transportation. And Bismarck's going to show off that he is the man of iron and that Germany has become strong like iron. And basically, the Germans are going to overwhelm the French at this battle. Napoleon III is there. He's captured by the Prussians. So there's really famous paintings of him sitting, this French emperor who has been deposed, sitting with Otto von Bismarck, and Bismarck kind of telling him what to do. And so the French and the Germans are going to sue for peace. The French are going to have another revolution. They're going to overthrow Napoleon III, and there's going to be a treaty, and it's called the Treaty of Versailles because it happens at Versailles Palace. Not the Treaty of Versailles you're thinking about that ended World War I, probably, but this Treaty of Versailles ends up with Napoleon III, the French Empire being ended, and a new empire being created. Not a Prussian Empire, but in order to show that the Prussians have taken control of all of Germany, it is going to be the German Empire. And Austria can't really do anything. So Prussia, this extremely militaristic, kind of this industrialized, mechanized, very productive people have, through their ingenuity, through patience, through good politics, and through using the Industrial Revolution to their advantage and all the natural resources of their own region, have taken over not just their own region, but solidified control over all of Germany. So the modern German state, after thousands of years of being in this fractured, limbo-like state with a bunch of different first barbarian tribes, then the Holy Roman Empire, then all the divided principalities, then Prussia and Austria fighting for control over the rest of the German states, finally, after thousands of years, Germany is finally a country. So that's a little known history fact that you guys maybe not know. We all think of Germany as this established European people and established European country, and in many ways it is, because it's like been there for thousands of years. The people have been just like the French and the British and the Russians. But the modern German state, the first united German state, does not really exist until 1871. So 150 years ago, just about over 150 years ago, boom, there's the German Empire, and Bismarck is going to remain as chancellor, and that Prince of Grapeshot is now going to become Kaiser, which is the German word for emperor, Caesar. It's from Caesar. So same as Tsar, by the way. And emperor, by the way, which we use for emperors, is from imperator, which the Romans use for commander or controller. So France is going to lose its empire. Germany's going to get an empire, and it's a large empire in mainland Europe. But it's soon going to get colonies in Africa. It took over the Cayman Islands and a bunch of other places. Germany's going to be a big, big feature for a long time, and that empire is going to be really powerful for about 50 years until it loses World War I. So, sorry, I needed some water. Point being, so what is Prussia and why does Prussia matter? Well, without Prussia, you wouldn't have a modern German state. Prussia starts off as this backwoods duchy created by the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth as kind of a satellite state that the Polish think that they can control Germany through. But over the years, through grit and determination, through good political leadership, through utilizing their natural resources and creating large armies. You think of the 18th century European soldiers drilling and marching forward. Those are the Prussians, and the British and the French borrow, and the Russians borrow from the Prussians. So from creating a really strong military, utilizing their own natural resources, maximizing their production, and coming up with brilliant statesmen like Bismarck, they are going to become not just the most powerful country in Central Europe, but they're going to create Germany, basically. So Prussia is extraordinarily important to history, and I find it fascinating that something that was started by the Polish would eventually overwhelm the Polish, becoming Germany. And almost as soon as Germany becomes an empire in 1871, it becomes basically the strongest power in Europe. And for the next 150 years, I still would say this is going on, everybody, at least for the next 120, everybody's wondering, what do we do with Germany? The German question is one of the biggest in the 20th century. How do you handle this extremely powerful, beautiful land with millions of people that has so many natural resources, but also has the potential for extreme militarism? It was born at the Prussians, drilled, no pun intended, militarism into the minds of the German people. Militarism is how the Kaisers, especially Kaiser Wilhelm II, gets what he wants, particularly and that's going to lead to World War I. And militarism will revive itself with the Nazi regime in the Third Reich. And the Third Reich there was the Holy Roman Empire, then there's the German Empire, and the Third Reich is Hitler's Germany. So, and then of course, then the question moves, how do we deal with this question of Germany, this extremely militant group that has been mainly responsible for causing both world wars at the end of World War II, and it's going to be divided between communist East and democratic West. And so the truth of the matter is that the Prussians create the German state, but they create a whole lot of questions and a whole lot of issues for Europe in its modern history. So, and what's the difference between Russia and Prussia? I don't know the actual linguistic reason. I think it's because part of where Prussia is right next to Russia. It's just to the west of Russia. So the Brandenburg Prussia is not one connected country when it first starts out. It's a duchy with Brandenburg in the northeastern corner. So here's Germany. Here's Brandenburg in the northeast corner. And then there's a bit of land that's controlled by Poland. Russia is huge. It's over here. And then Prussia's right here. So when Germany is connected as an entire empire in 1871 at the Treaty of Versailles, the first Treaty of Versailles, or one of the first treaties of Versailles, that whole area is going to connect and make a big kind of, you got Germany, and then you've got this eastern panhandle that stretches all the way to Prussia. So, anyways, so that's a little bit about the Prussians. Let's look at the chat. I can't answer all of the questions today, guys, but these are some great questions, and I hope you guys bring them back next time. And Kel's saying, this guy talks nonsense. Britain isn't a country, it's a collective. I'm talking about the 1800s. So yes, Britain existed in the 1800s. And there was no Germany in 1707. Go look up a map from 1700. There was no Germany. It was the Holy Roman Empire, and that wasn't all the Germans, and that wasn't only the Germans. So there was no unified Germany like there is a unified France or England, if you want to go with that. And yes, Britain didn't exist until 1707. I'm very well aware the Act of Union created the Great Britain with Scotland and England. It wasn't called Celtic Britain. That is not true. So, anyways, it was called England, and then it was called Great Britain. Then it became the United Kingdom, with the Third Act of Union, which gave, or the Second Act of Union, which put Ireland into the mix. So, and so this doesn't take, of course, what I'm saying, none of what I'm saying takes away from the importance or significance of the German people in European history. I'm not saying that the German people and the area that is now Germany was not significant and important throughout European history. All I'm saying is that the modern German state, in its form as a nation state of the German people, didn't exist until 1871, all thanks to the efforts of the industrious and militaristic Prussian kingdom. Yes, Kelt, if you had been here earlier, you would have heard me say that. So you are correct about that. You're not correct about the other stuff, but you are correct about that. So, anyways, we're about halfway through the live stream. We're gonna call it a little earlier on the earlier side today. I've got another topic I want to discuss with you guys. But if you have a topic you want me to discuss next Sunday during our more podcast format, or I've got to come up with a name for what this is, because we have live Q&As Friday and Saturday, and now we're trying out Sundays. It's kind of just me talking history, a lecture, if you want to call it that. I would love to talk about that. Let's talk about that next Saturday or next Friday on the live stream. So if you guys have comments and questions you want to talk about next Friday and Saturday, please do so. So all of these are great topics that we can talk about on our live streams. We will be doing Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the United States, and Saturday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the United States, so 4 o'clock Pacific. You live in England. Welcome. I love having people from all over the world. And we have people from all over the world all the time. So yes, I'm very excited to have you all there. And if you enjoy what you are learning about and you enjoy learning about history, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Yes, the Picts and the Celts were the main people, and the Picts were from Northern England and Scotland. Yes, I'm very well aware of that, Celt. Thank you. I'm not trying to pick on you. You clearly know a lot about what you're talking about. I just disagree with what you said about Germany. But thank you for helping and tuning in from Edmonton. So we got people from Canada. That's really, really cool. So anyways, if you like learning about history, if you enjoy learning about different types of history, again, it's not just Western history. That was just one topic I wanted to discuss. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. We are trying to reach 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year, a legion of friendly neighborhood historians, and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian is as easy as liking and subscribing. So I really appreciate all your support and feedback. Hope you guys are enjoying this. We'll see. We'll try this out and see if people actually enjoy the lecture content as much as they do the live stream and the Q&A. So, anyways, so what are we going to talk about next? Well, there's a lot of powerhouse couples in human history, and I've talked about some. I've talked about maybe the best romantic couple in human history as Albert and Victoria of Britain in the 19th century. I've talked a lot about different. There's different romantic couples. I've talked about. I have a series I'm doing right now, a short form content series about powerful women rulers. And so sometimes I'm talking about women who ruled independently. Sometimes I'm talking about women who influenced the scene from the sidelines, working with their husbands to create a powerful kingdom. And one that came across that I just can't ignore is Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain, the original powerhouse couple, maybe the greatest royal couple of all history. So Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain were married in 1469. At that time, Spain was like Germany, like I was just discussing. Again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. No, I am not reading out a book. But anyways, so, but basically the whole point is Isabella and Ferdinand get married in 1469. At this time, Spain is not a united country. There are different regions in Spain that have emerged. In the late 7th century AD, the Muslims conquered the Visigothic kingdom of Spain, which was a Christian kingdom, and renamed it Al-Andalus. This was the Umayyad Caliphate, and the Umayyad Caliphate brought about a golden age of learning and education. They built up beautiful cities like Cordoba and things like that, and they allowed some form of religious tolerance. They created new art. Some of the most important Islamic philosophers during the Islamic Golden Age, which is another topic I want to get to at some point, were from Spain. And so there was a lot of cosmopolitan diversity in Spain. But the Christians in Spain had wanted to free their country for centuries. So soon afterwards, there begins what's called the Reconquista. And the Reconquista dominates the High Middle Ages in Spain. It's where different historical figures, El Cid is the best example, fought to free Spain and Portugal from the Muslims. By the way, the reason Portugal and Spain are two different countries and not one country known as Iberia is because Portugal got its independence from the Muslims and established its own kingly line centuries before the Spanish did. So there are several different Spanish states and principalities. There is not one Spanish kingdom. Again, Spain is referring to the language and the culture, not to the country yet. So the Umayyad Caliphate later becomes known as the Almoravids, and by the time of Ferdinand and Isabella, they have lost a lot of their power and influence, and they are now an emirate, meaning a kingdom, that's a Muslim kingdom, known as the Emirate of Cordoba, the southern part, or Granada. And Cordoba is their capital, and that's in southern Spain. So the Christians have fought the Muslims back all that way. And there are several different Christian kingdoms that have emerged. Castile and Leon in the northwestern part of Spain, Navarre and Aragon, yeah, like Aragon from the Lord of the Rings, kind of, in northeastern Spain. When Ferdinand is the king of Aragon, Castile and Leon, the other two, the biggest states, are ruled over jointly by Isabella. So when they marry, you now have the marriage and the mixing of the two sides, the northwest and the northeastern part of Spain. Portugal is its own independent country, totally autonomous, with its own language and developing culture. And at this point, they're starting to ride the waves and go all over the world through the sea, trying to trade with Africa and India. Let me see. But I don't know who that is, but interesting. Gallego, Portugal. I know a little bit about Portugal's founding, not a huge amount, but thank you for shouting that out. So Ferdinand and Isabella get married in 1468, and they independently rule their kingdoms for a time. In fact, throughout most of their reign, he is still the king of Aragon, and she is still the queen of Castile and Leon. But many people consider this the union of the Spanish, and that Spain is becoming one Christian country because their heir will rule over all of Spain, and their heir is Charles I, I believe it's Charles I, who will be also Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, the Habsburg guy I was talking about earlier. He is the king of Spain, and when Spain conquers the New World, destroys the Aztecs and the Incas and conquers the Caribbean. He is also the king of Spain. He is also the Holy Roman Emperor during Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation. So he's one of the most powerful and influential and central figures in European and Western history, as well as that of the New World. So that's just an interesting side note. So Ferdinand and Isabella, under them, Spain becomes wealthy, it becomes stronger, it becomes more independent, and you get the sense that Spain is emerging as its own early modern state. And they are in a liminal point. They are between the medieval world and the developing early modern world, and their union and their fighting against the Muslims and their consolidation of Spanish power and Spanish autonomy is a growing indicator and sign that Spain is becoming more and more independent and more powerful. And the most significant of these events occurs in 1492, and it's not the event you're thinking of. Interesting. That is interesting. Thank you for telling me that. So that would be in. Thank you for telling me about that. But anyways, so that is fascinating. So they're kind of in between them two. So the biggest event is in 1492, and it's not the one you're thinking about, because the one you're thinking about is Columbus. Columbus is part of this, but not as big of a deal as you think, at least not to Ferdinand and Isabella. Ferdinand and Isabella defeat the Emirate of Granada and capture Cordoba and conquer southeastern Spain. And after 700 years, more than 700 years of Muslim influence and power in the Iberian Peninsula, they are finally cut off and removed. And Cordoba is taken, Granada is taken, and Ferdinand and Isabella have unified all of Spain at this point, at least most of what we consider modern-day Spain. They have defeated the Muslims, and they do two things. One, to celebrate with a little bit of money from the spoils they have taken from the Muslims, they fund Columbus's voyage, thinking if he goes west, Columbus thinking that if he goes west, he will be able to get to India. It's really the New World at the end of the day. Meanwhile, they also, funding Columbus isn't the only thing that they do. That is kind of a side note and a celebration, so it's kind of over the top. And Columbus, of course, reaches the New World, and then there's going to be prolonged contact, and it's actually not Ferdinand who is in charge of Columbus's voyage. It's Isabella. Isabella is the one who gives him the money. Isabella is the one who has more power, influence, and land than Ferdinand. So despite the fact that they are a royal powerhouse that have already accomplished this much, if you look at it very closely and if you read the history, you find that Isabella was the more dominant of the two monarchs. And Isabella actually, this is interesting. Isabella, if you look at any picture of Columbus leaving for the New World, he's not, or if he's addressing the Spanish monarchy, any painting, he is not addressing Ferdinand. He's talking to Isabella. But it was Ferdinand who pressured Columbus, as still part of the whole expedition, to start enslaving the natives, who believed it would be a good idea. And it was Ferdinand and Isabella who turned on Columbus when reports came from his political enemies of some of his activities in the New World. So there was a lot of pressure and tension between Columbus and Ferdinand in particular. So that's just an aside there. But Ferdinand and Isabella, not only have they defeated the Muslims and sent Columbus on their voyage, they do something that's a little bit more tragic. They having defeated the Muslims, they begin to expel not just Muslims, but Jews from Spain. So for centuries, in the regions of Spain occupied by the Christians, which were more and more land over time, during the Reconquista, a lot of Jews and Muslims who were living, whose parents and ancestors had been Jews and Muslims living in Muslim Spain, were baptized as Christians by nannies, family members, friends, as a way to integrate them into the local society and to save their souls from eternal damnation. However, they still grew up as Jews and Muslims, practicing Judaism and Islam. So they were technically baptized Christians who were practicing religions that the Catholic Church did not, of course, condone. This led to persecution of them and the creation of the infamous Spanish Inquisition. And the Spanish Inquisition, a topic I haven't talked about enough on this channel, but basically, the Spanish Inquisition sees the... oh, well, thank you, Simon. Simon's here. We've got our moderator. We've got everything taken care of. What I was going to say is, yes, they were Christians on paper. Thank you, Belisarius. They were on paper, you had these Christians who had been baptized, and the church had a record of their baptism, but they were raised as Jews and Muslims. And they had no idea that they had been baptized by nannies, by friends, by people who were trying to save their eternal souls, or at least trying to keep them safe from in a growing Christian area. So these people would often be put on trial for being Christians who practiced heresy. Not for being Jews who practice Judaism or Muslims who practice Islam, but for being Christians. The misunderstanding the church never really cared about the misunderstanding or had the subtlety or nuance to integrate it. So a lot of the time, these people would be tried as Christians and persecuted as Christians, even though they were not Christians. They were Muslims and Jews and had only been baptized unbeknownst to them. So they were just as surprised to find out that they were Christians as the Catholics were to find out that these supposedly baptized Christians have been practicing Islam and Judaism. But this didn't stop the church from persecuting them, putting them on trial and asking them the question. The question was, do you believe, and this is a Catholic belief, that the bread and the wine in communion services becomes the body and blood of Jesus Christ? Jews and Muslims clearly don't believe in Jesus Christ, at least as a God, so they clearly would say no. So when they would say no to this, that was grounds for increased torture and murder and killing them off. And so the Spanish Inquisition flourishes under Ferdinand and Isabella, but also what flourishes is expelling Jews and Muslims from Spain. Seeing them as troublemakers and dangerous. The anti-Semitism is rampant in Spain as it is throughout most of Europe at this time and for centuries to come. And of course, there's obviously hatred of the Muslims because of these centuries of opposition between the Christians and the Muslims for control of Al-Andalus or Spain. That you have the expulsion of thousands of Jews and Muslims starting in 1492 by Ferdinand and Isabella. So they celebrate their victory over the Muslims and then start to oppress the Muslims. So Ferdinand and Isabella are not the best people. Of course, their reign also coincides with Spain developing New World colonies, which often led to the suffering, oppression, and death of many Native Americans. So they've got a complex legacy and a mixed legacy, as any European monarch would have at that time. But they were instrumental in indirectly through Columbus creating the modern world, and they are also a powerhouse couple. And I believe Ferdinand dies in 1506 and she dies in 1508. And there you have the end of their line. And from that line on, Spain is going to be its own kingdom with one ruler. And I believe it's Charles I, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who is the next one, the Habsburg. So, so Ferdinand and Isabella, I want to tell you guys about a powerhouse royal couple. Ferdinand and Isabella are that powerhouse royal couple. So talk to you about Prussia, talk to you about Spain, and yes, I don't always do European history, but these are topics I've wanted to discuss for a while. And we got to talk about the Inquisition, something I've never really talked about on this channel, interestingly enough. So not something that is usually on my to-do list, but I'm glad that I got to talk about it because it's something people obviously wonder about historically, and I should do a video on the Spanish Inquisition. So anyways, I'm going to look at the chat for a couple minutes and maybe answer a couple of things that are related to what I was just talking about, and then we're going to call it a day. And this seemed to have gone pretty well, kind of a lecture podcast format. I don't know exactly what we're going to call it, but we're going to do it again. Next weekend, we're going to be here Friday, Saturday for live Q&A, Ask Me Anything, social studies related, and then Sunday we'll be here for our usual this, basically. We'll try this out and see if it works, and if it keeps, and this was pretty successful, so if it keeps being successful, we will have kind of a lecture format that will hopefully evolve into something of a podcast. So Simon's here. We're all happy about that. Oh, Head's asking, what inspired you to learn so much about history? I just loved acquiring that knowledge and the ability to exercise my brain and my memory. So, yeah. But Belisaris is talking about the Inquisition. He talked about Galicia and how that broke off from Portugal and became part of Castile. And that's why the language of the Galician people in Spain is partially Portuguese influence, or at least their dialect is. Yes, I've heard of that, Belisarius. So they would actually observe if people were following the Sabbath. And if they felt they were following the Sabbath, as Jews do, that would be a sign that they were not following. Because for Christians, their holy day and their day of rest is Sunday. And for Jews, it's on Saturday. It's the Sabbath, Shabbat. So that was one indicator. So they would see if they were following Jewish dietary customs, Jewish sanitary customs. For instance, Jews, obviously with kosher laws, do not eat pork. But they also do not wash, cook, and use the same pots and pans and Tupperware for meat and cheese. They can't eat meat and dairy in the same meal. So that was a way they did it. And yeah, they were secretly Jews. Yeah, I was just, Belsers, I'm so glad you're here. It's so good to see you. You always bring so much knowledge. I was just talking about Otto von Bismarck and actually the creation of the Prussian state. Basically, Bismarck, in the 1850s and 60s, the man of iron, utilized Germany's productive power, the Prussian productive power, to continually grow Prussia's wealth and thus make it a likable trading partner with the rest of Germany. He eventually sets up a network and a chain where the Prussians are trading with the rest of the German states, and Austria is excluded. So as Austria is decreasing, Prussia is increasing. Bismarck also modernizes and reforms the army, and the army is able to defeat the Austrians and Denmark multiple times, and eventually the French in the Franco-Prussian War, and Germany is able to become one country. And yes, there was also a Galicia in the Ukraine from the 1800s, the very famous, infamous, depending on your perspective, Galicia campaign of World War I. So, and that's interesting. So your grandfather was a Sephardim. We talked about that on channel, yeah. Okay, so, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So if you liked what you learned about today, if you enjoy learning about history, and if you enjoy listening to the sound of my voice, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Trying to grow the channel. 6,000, a legion by the end of the year would be an amazing thing. Interesting. The Gallego language. Thank you for telling me about that, Belisarius. I always learn something from you, and I really appreciate you being here. So, anyways, that's it. Our tripartite weekend is over. We have done 3 live streams in 3 days, and they all went pretty successfully. We had some technical issues and bumps in the road today to start us off, but for our first time lecturing and talking about some history stuff, I think we did pretty well. We will be back Friday, 5 days from now, guys. 7 p.m. Eastern time, same time on Saturday, to talk to you about history. We might do 8 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit later. Start your Fridays and your weekends with a little bit of some friendly neighborhood history for all of my friendly neighborhood historians. like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. I really appreciate seeing all of these friendly faces. You guys are the backbone of this channel, and I can't do it without you guys. So a lot of fun stuff coming up soon. And if you guys have topics you want to discuss, drop them in the channel, maybe on a comment on a video, and those are topics I can discuss maybe next Sunday, or bring your questions and comments and ideas Friday and Saturday. And yep. Well, I'm glad you're at the party. Better late than never. And there's such a thing as fashionably late. And Balisarius, you were very fashionably late. I won't push my luck, but if you're here, I'm happy to see you. Happy to have you here as always. So let's see. I always do my last call. I will take one more topic / question in the chat, and even though I haven't done questions today, and then we are going to sign off. When can we do Scramble for Africa? I've done it. I have a long form video on that, Balisarius. I think I shared it with you that I think you'd really like. It's like 8 minutes. It was my first longer form video. Thank you. I really appreciate your support. But yeah, you can check that out. But yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about that on Friday. If I forget, I will make it a topic for next Sunday. So we'll talk about the Scramble for Africa. It's also how Prussia, which was now Germany under Bismarck, kept a world war from happening, but also made sure to get its claws into Africa. So yeah, we've talked about that a lot on the channel. I'd love to talk about it again. And thank you so much for joining us. Any last questions? I will take one more topic question from any of you wonderful people out there. But thank you for a really great live stream and a really great kind of a lecture format. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And I hope you have a great Sunday. Going once, going twice, sold. All right, I will see you guys later this week, literally on Friday, for the next live stream. And hopefully you guys are checking out the short form and long form content. You are great with a lot of history, and that's what I really appreciate about you. You are the best. But check out the long form, short form content, and I will see you guys in person, in the flesh. At least you'll see me in the flesh on Friday, early Friday evening. Take care and have a great week, guys. Bye-bye now.